Hello world, Dano here, stacking paper as always, and today we are reviewing the final book in the original Corum trilogy, The King of the Swords. Now, I feel about this book pretty much how I feel about the other two. I still think it's about a 6. I really do like the themes, and I'm gonna side tangent. Daniel Green just came out with a video on Elric. I guess he had just finished, or he just read a lot of the Elric stories, and he agreed with what I'm saying about the prose and like the melodrama. It is a little much, but he did give me a bit of a perspective on the greater themes and like character development of Elric specifically, but all the Eternal Champions, and I can appreciate that. It really is just the prose that throws me. It's just, it's weirdly pulpy and purple at the same time, and just so melodramatic. But I think this is one of the better ones. I especially like the ending, weirdly enough. So, essentially, this book starts off. There's like this miasma going through all of Corum's like home country, where people are just turning on each other and killing each other. So all of his forces that he gained in the second book, like that massive sky ship, all the people from the Vada from that other dimension, they just wipe themselves out essentially. So he's like back to square one. And he has to find Mabalode, who's the King of Swords. One contention I'll definitely have is for a book called The King of the Swords, he's literally in the book for like 2 pages. And he doesn't really do much. But I'll get there. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but yeah, that was weird. But what was cool about this one is it was a surprise crossover book. We have Elric and Erikoze joining Corum, which I did not expect. But it was a nice surprise. Basically, Corum and Jari and Relina, they're running away from Glandith, who has somehow gained dragons, like the exact same dragons that Melnibone has, and they're running away. And Jari has to guide their skyship essentially through limbo, where it's just blackness all around them, and they see all these scenes of the different champions. So Elric, Erikoze, Hawkmoon, and Jari's explaining all these things to Corum. And it's really trippy and interesting. And somewhere along all that, Relina gets kidnapped. Of course, she does. And so the goal now is, actually, sorry, I'm fucking all over the place. So they find this like castle made of blood. It's pretty metal. And Corum has to defeat the guy inside, but before that, he gets sent to what's seemingly like the regular world, just like it seems like regular, like medieval Earth. And Corum sees another version of himself and Jari, and he also loses the ability to use his hand and the eye. Yeah, another gripe. He doesn't even get to use the Hand of Quill or the Eye of Rin for the entire book. It's just, it doesn't work, and he doesn't know why. Which, yeah, is it's a big part of this like buttersoft magic system that Moorcock has, where he can just decide on a whim when stuff works and when stuff doesn't. Which, like, I know it's part of the genre, but fuck, I hate it so much. Because it's like, man, that's Corum's whole like gimmick, right? You're just gonna take that away from him for the whole book? He's just... And you know what? That is like a big part of this book. Corum just feels like a passenger in this story. He doesn't really have like much agency in terms of like directing where the story's going. Anywho, though, so after that whole little medieval adventure, they meet this old guy who I guess is kind of like Jerry. Is it Jari? I'm just gonna call him Jerry. Where he's like an eternal companion of sorts, or like an old mage that's been around forever. and he gives him instructions on how to summon Elric, which was interesting. As soon as he brought up Elric, I was like, oh shit, so Elric's going to be in this book? That's awesome. And he does. He summons Elric, and he summons Arakose because of the Vanishing Tower, which is interesting because the Vanishing Tower is an Elric book that is also a bit of a crossover. So I didn't expect it to show up in this book, and for this book to also be a crossover. So Jerry goes into this tower, which disappears, and of course now it never stays in one dimension long enough. So now him, Elric, and Arakose have to make it to this tower. They get inside, and they kind of have to fight this like mini boss who literally feels like the boss of this book. Weirdly enough. Because at first I was like, is this the King of Swords? Like, this is pretty anticlimactic. But it's a cool fight. They have to fight all these, like, weird, like, monkey tiger demons that this guy is producing. He's, like, throwing these yellow balls, and they explode and create these little demons they have to fight. And they can only be harmed by their own weapons, which was interesting. But it's Elric that figures that out. So that's what I mean. Like, Corum... It almost doesn't even feel like a Corum book. He's just kind of there while other people solve problems for him. But it's fine, because I think that there is like a big theme of that in this book where the stuff, like the narrative that Corum is involved in, these battles, they're so much bigger than him. And I think it's like he's really realizing that in this book. Especially with the big twist, I guess you could say, of this book is that they find Tanalorn and they meet Quill, like the actual Quill, the real god Quill, and who starts explaining to Corum, you know, you have to willingly give me the key, which is the hand of Quill. And Jerry is basically like, you shouldn't do this, but Corum does it anyway. Jerry's like, you fool. Because Corum makes a deal with him. He says, if I give you back this hand, will you go save Relina and wipe out chaos from my realm? Quill says, sure, absolutely. And then as soon as he gives him back the hand and Quill has his power back, he goes, yeah, I don't make bargains with fucking mortals. I'm going to go do what I want. Because turns out the whole conflict between Quill and his brother Rin, the reason they killed each other is because they only had one rule. And their one rule was that they would only live for each other. Like, they would worship each other and nobody else. So Quill talks about the other gods, like Law and Chaos, and he says they're all petty, like, they're below us. Rin and I only live, we're the only beings in the universe that truly live for pleasure. Like, we just live to live, and we don't care about anything else. And I guess through some verbal trickery, Jerry convinces Quill that he needs to help them, which was kind of dumb, but I'm like, whatever, man. They clearly need someone. And then immediately it's like, this is like huge Deus Ex Machina. Quill takes them both to the realm of the King of Swords, which was really trippy because he lives in this big castle that looks like Relina. Like, it's like so over the top. But Quill is the one who actually gets to defeat the King of Swords, and we don't even really see it happen, I was really annoyed when I first read it, because they get there, Mabelode has Relina, and Quill just starts wrecking their shit. And Mabelode realizes he's in trouble, and he's like, fuck, okay, all minions who serve chaos, like, come to me. So every single power of chaos is now gathering to Mabelode, while Quill is just like 1v1000ing, gets back Relina, sends Corum and Relina back to Corum's homeworld, with Quill instructing him to drop the Eye of Rin in the lake where Corum's old castle is, and he's like, Rin will find it. And it was disappointing at first, right? Because the fight is just starting, and it was really interesting, and then they just get sent away. Like this big fucking crazy fight between gods that we just don't get to see. But I think that's kind of the point, because when Quill sends Corum back, Corum now he doesn't have the Hand of Quill, and he doesn't have the Eye of Rin, so he's actually just maimed again. Like, he just is missing a hand and missing an eye. And now he has to fight Glandith. Actual, just regular old Glandith, who has his dragons, but then those dragons have to leave because Mabelode summoned all the chaos creatures and warriors. So while that crazy multiversal battle between those two is happening, Corum gets his real fight, which is with Glandith, because at the end of the day, he's the guy who started this whole thing. Even though Glandith was working for Ariok and he's just a pawn himself, Corum's real quarrel was just with this one guy. So it is kind of interesting that within all that crazy multiversal shit, the climax of the final book, it's just a straight one-on-one fight between Corum and Glandith. And I think that's actually pretty fitting. I was really annoyed by this at first, but it actually does make sense. Because Corum, like, he's really just a passenger this whole book. And then this last part, this is the one thing that he can actually do. Even though it's a funny line, because Glandith's men are behind him, and Corum is like, are you going to give me, like, a clean 1v1? Or are your guys going to jump me after? And Glandith's like, well, if you consider the fact that you having no hand and no eye is a fair fight, that's fine with me. Like, I'm going to wreck your shit anyway. But of course, Corum wins. In a weird way, Glandith gets distracted momentarily, and Corum just takes him right in the throat. But that's how battles are sometimes. So, and it's Rin that was the distraction. Rin finds his eye. Turns out he was the waiting god this whole time. And that's pretty much just the end of the book, really. And like, even though I still do have problems with, like, the prose and, like, the pacing, and especially with, like, there's some heavy Deus Ex Machina in this one especially. I'm more just disappointed that we didn't really get to see much of Mabelode, even though I guess you could say the same thing about Ariok and Jambarg, but they have more screen time, you know? And at least with the Knight of Swords, that's the only one that Corum actually beat. Although not really, because Quill does explain to him that there are moments where, in all three books, where Corum seems to see someone in the distance, and then him seeing that person actually ends up saving him in some way. That was Quill the whole time, or Quill's shadow, he said. And anytime the hand acted on its own, that was Quill doing it. So this entire time, Corum really hasn't been the one with the agency at all. He's been a puppet this whole time. So it was kind of refreshing to see that it ended well, that it really just came down to his only real confrontation, which was with Glandith. And even Glandith himself, he tries to take agency, but he's also just a pawn. So yeah, I will say, I think I like the way that this all wraps up. I might even give this one a 6.5 just because of that. And there is, like, the cool crossover moments with Elric and Ericose, which I was not expecting. But yeah, to be honest, I'm kind of happy to be done Michael Moorcock for a while, though. I need to take a heavy break from him. I probably won't come back to his stuff until like fall or winter maybe. But I'm glad I read it, though. They're really important in the grand scheme of fantasy. It really is just the prose, and I have to accept that a lot of this stuff is like pulp. Maybe not maybe not Corum, but the Elric stuff definitely was, and that kind of bleeds into how he wrote the other Eternal Champion novels. He does re-explain the same shit a lot, but, like, I get it, you know. Some readers just aren't that sharp. Maybe he knew his audience, I don't know, but it was good, though. I still enjoyed Corum. I think I enjoyed the Corum stuff more than Elric so far. We'll have to see once I've read more Elric, but solid books, but I can't say I ever really want to read them again. So next, what are we reading next? It's weird. I'm reading kind of a lot of things at the same time right now. Because I do a lot of reading at work, actually, because I have so much downtime. So I'm reading a lot of, like, public domain stuff online. So a lot of Sherlock Holmes. So I'm going to review those soon. But Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, the third Cosmere Secret project, that's going to be probably the next one that comes out. And then I really want to get to Will of the Many. I think like I need to start getting these big fantasy chunkers out of the way. So Will of the Many, and then probably gonna finish up Stormlight. I'm thinking that's the play. So yeah, until next time, take it easy.